How do you think Jessica Lange compares to Fay Wray?
She was. I mean, she was fine. You know, but she was like sort of just what you'd expect. I don't think that there was anything that made the role hers, so to speak. Um, it. You know, I mean, I felt. You know, Charles Grodin is a good villain because he always seems to be pissed off about something. But I don't. He wasn't as effective for me. And I love Robert Armstrong in the original film. He's I in fact I would have to say I totally identify with Robert Armstrong in that film as a filmmaker, and to the extent that I am right now. You may know that I did the film Spookies a number of years back, which suddenly, once it got onto Blu-ray, suddenly became known after so many people never saw it over many years. And I am right now writing a sequel to Spookies, and I specifically quote a line from King Kong of Robert Armstrong's.
With this new Spookies you doing, how how did that come about? How's that?
Now, the thing is, the original Spookies sort of like laid a barrier in my career at the time because the film got taken out of the hands of myself and my partners. We had to deal with the fact that like the film that came out was a totally different film. It got re-edited, new footage got inserted into it. It was just a disgrace as far as we were concerned. And at the time, there was like no way for us to really, you know, really feel comfortable enough to own it because we couldn't realistically go to people and say, yeah, this film with all these problems that we hate is our film. So it's sort of never, and I never got to capitalize on it. I never, you know, I mean, that's what you make a film and then you use that as your stepping stone to the next one. But bizarrely, all these many years later, the DVD, not the DVD, the Blu-ray came out about 2 years ago. First time in, well, since the late 80s when it was on VHS, and it gave many people a chance to see it. It was a great quality copy from the original negative, and suddenly I was like, Spookies, and then there's the other film I did, Street Trash, which has been around for a while and has been sort of had a reputation for a while. But with the addition of Spookies, I sort of like got welcomed into the pantheon of 80s horror movies. I mean, it's you know, now people are constantly like, you know, after me for things, and you know, and I haven't gotten out to do like conventions or anything yet, but it took me a while to come to terms with the fact that I have fans for something that I thought had killed my career years ago. So I'm pretty pleased with that, and that you know, and I like to make another film, and Spookies is certainly the easiest thing for me to finance at this moment, and so that's what I'm doing. And I wrote a script almost finished that I'm pretty proud of. I think it's really damn good.
Great. I'm looking forward to that now. I've heard all that. Um, I mean, with Spookies and Street Trash, when I've watched them, obviously
Mhm.
there's practical effects and um, gory stuff being flung about and everything. Um, yeah. With that, has like the physical suits and stop motion of King Kong or any other big monster movie influenced you at all?
Well, I mean, we did practical effects at that time, certainly because it was the only way you could accomplish something like that. But I still tend to favor practical effects for the most part. I mean, a lot of CGI is great, but even more CGI just looks terrible, or it just looks too much like CGI. It's like, yeah, it looks like really lovely. It's a great image, but I would never expect anything like that to appear in reality. It just doesn't feel real. You know, whereas something that's like rubber and it's got, you know, wires and levers making it move, etc. At least it's like it's there. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it is, it's actually there on camera.
Peter Jackson is this sort of world-known director of Lord of the Rings and King Kong, but
Mhm.
actually, when you look at his films, you can look at his early stuff, and you got like Brain Dead and things like that. And it's like I prefer all his early sort of gory splatter
He was
stuff.
sure from the first films he did, Bad Taste and Brain Dead. I mean, he was just I really, it's like, because like sometimes I'll watch a film and I go, all right, this guy knows his shit. He could make any film he wanted and it would be great.
Yeah, but comparing Lord of the Rings and like Brain Dead, they're two completely different entities, and it's
Yeah,
like how do you go from like a um a guy chopping people out of a lawnmower to these big nice New
Well,
Zealand.
how can I like both films? I mean, how can I have taste that spans that wide a range? It does. My taste is all over the place. I like all kinds of stuff, and I think I sometimes feel, because I know like lots and lots of horror fans, and sometimes people just like either just channel themselves. They watch nothing but horror, or they watch nothing but horror from exactly like 1980 to 1991 and nothing else or whatever. And I think there's just so much great stuff out there. Why should you miss anything? And now you finally have access to most of it.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing is that with old films like the original King Kong, obviously the name King Kong and the image of King Kong is so world famous, but I don't think a lot of younger people or maybe some older people have actually seen a King Kong film. Obviously they know of it, but they haven't. It's like Star Wars.
No, it's interesting because I grew up with a love of old movies from the time I was a kid. So it just didn't, I just liked movies. So it didn't matter. The year didn't matter. It mattered whether the movie was appealing to me. But I think in most cases, and this goes for like music and other pop culture too, most people go with whatever is put in front of them at, the age that whatever, when probably from your like early teens on, you're like seriously affected by like things you see and experience. So that's where they focus. Like 80s horror right now is hotter than it's ever been, and that's all people are talking about most of the time. But there's so much else.
Yeah, I mean, but with 80s horror, that there's a small pocket of time in the horror genre where that was sort of, you got John Carpenter and everyone like that doing.
That's also the time where horror went like really big time mainstream, and the studios realized, gee, we can keep making these movies that we used to just like write off as for like a certain segment of the audience, and like now they can make a fortune, and we can make endless sequels, etc. And so everybody cashed in at that time.